Tony Hawk, a name that isn't just synonymous with skateboarding, it is skateboarding. From a kid shredding in empty pools to an athlete who revolutionized the sport, Tony became a legend, pulling off tricks no one else dared to try. But here's what you don't know. Tony Hawk didn't just conquer skateboarding, he built an empire worth nearly $1 billion. How did a rebellious street skater turn into one of the most successful businessmen in sports? This is the untold story of how Tony Hawk went from changing skateboarding forever to building a business juggernaut. Stay with us, because Tony's business ride is as jaw-dropping as his 900-degree spin. The story starts in the 1970s with a young Tony Hawk growing up in Southern California. Skateboarding wasn't seen as a serious sport back then. It was a rebellious hobby, something kids did for fun in the streets or empty swimming pools. But Tony was different. By the time he was 14, he had gone pro, and by 16, he was already one of the best skateboarders in the world. With his innovative tricks and fearless attitude, Tony was changing the way people thought about the sport. But here's where things get interesting. While Tony was winning competitions and stacking up trophies, skateboarding as a sport was on the decline. Sponsors were pulling out, skate parks were closing. For most pros, this was the end of the line, but not for Tony. Instead of giving up, he doubled down because Tony Hawk had a vision. He knew that skateboarding wasn't just a trend, it was a culture, and he was going to be the face of it. In the late 1980s, Tony Hawk made his first big move into the world of business. He co-founded Birdhouse Skateboards with Per Waylander, another professional skateboarder. But here's the thing, the skateboard industry was struggling. Skateboarding wasn't cool anymore. It wasn't on TV, and it definitely wasn't profitable. People thought Tony was crazy for starting a skateboarding company at a time when no one seemed to care about the sport. But Tony, he was playing the long game. Birdhouse didn't blow up overnight. In fact, it barely survived its early years. Tony had to sell his house just to keep the company afloat, but he believed in it. He believed that skateboarding would make a comeback, and when it did, Birdhouse would be ready, and he was right. By the mid-90s, skateboarding was back, and Birdhouse was at the center of it all. The company became a major player in the skateboarding world, selling boards, apparel, and accessories to a new generation of skaters. But this was just the beginning. Tony wasn't content with just running a skateboard company. He wanted to take skateboarding to the mainstream, and the next step would change everything. Tony Hawk had already defied the odds by keeping Birdhouse alive during skateboarding's darkest days. But now, he had his sights set on something even bigger, taking skateboarding from the streets to the global stage. But how could a sport that was once seen as rebellious and niche become a mainstream phenomenon? Stick around, because Tony's next move was about to turn the world upside down. In 1999, everything changed. Tony Hawk was already a skateboarding legend, but his fame skyrocketed when he partnered with Activision to create Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, a video game that would go on to become one of the most iconic sports games in history. But here's the kicker. When the game was first pitched to Tony, skateboarding video games weren't exactly a hot market. Most people thought the idea wouldn't work, but Tony saw the potential. He knew that if done right, a video game could bring skateboarding to an entirely new audience. Kids who had never even stepped on a board could now experience the thrill of the sport virtually. And boy, was he right. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was an instant hit, selling millions of copies and making Tony Hawk a household name. The game's success didn't just put money in Tony's pocket, it elevated skateboarding culture into the mainstream like never before. And get this, Tony struck one of the smartest deals in gaming history. Instead of just taking a flat fee for the game, he negotiated royalties. This move paid off big time. By the early 2000s, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was raking in hundreds of millions of dollars. It became a franchise, spawning multiple sequels, and every time a new game dropped, Tony's bank account got a little bigger. But more than that, the game cemented Tony's status as a cultural icon. He wasn't just a skater anymore, he was a brand. By now, Tony Hawk wasn't just the king of skateboarding, he was a global sensation. But was it all luck, or was Tony quietly building something much bigger than anyone could have imagined? The Tony Hawk empire was only getting started, and his next move would prove that he was more than just a skater. He was a visionary. As Tony's video game empire grew, so did his vision. Tony Hawk didn't just want to be a skater who endorsed products. He wanted to build his own brand. And that's exactly what he did. He launched Tony Hawk Inc., a company that would handle all of his business ventures, from endorsements to licensing deals. Tony wasn't just slapping his name on products. He was carefully curating his brand, making sure that everything he put his name on reflected the skateboarding culture he loved. Whether it was clothing lines, skate shoes, or even amusement park rides, Tony Hawk was building an empire that extended far beyond the skate park. And let's talk about those endorsements. Tony became the face of Nixon watches, Lexus, and Vans, among other major brands. But he didn't just collect paychecks. He invested in these companies, making sure he had a stake in the businesses he promoted. That's the secret to Tony's success. He wasn't just making money off his name, he was growing his wealth by becoming part owner of the brands he represented. But even as Tony's business empire grew, he never forgot where he came from. He remained deeply involved in the skateboarding world, sponsoring young skaters through Birdhouse and investing in skate parks across the country. He wasn't just making money, he was giving back to the sport that had given him everything. Tony Hawk was on top of the world, but success like this doesn't come without sacrifices. How did Tony manage to juggle running a multi-million-dollar empire while staying true to his skateboarding roots? And what challenges did he face along the way? Stick with us, because the pressures of business success were about to collide with Tony's passion for skating. As Tony's business empire grew, so did his desire to give back. In 2002, he founded the Tony Hawk Foundation, an organization dedicated to building skate parks in low-income communities. For Tony, this wasn't just charity, it was personal. He knew how much skateboarding had changed his life, and he wanted to give that same opportunity to kids who didn't have access to proper facilities. Over the years, the Tony Hawk Foundation has helped build over 600 skate parks across the US, giving thousands of kids a safe place to skate and stay out of trouble. But Tony's philanthropy didn't stop there. He's also donated millions to various causes, from disaster relief to youth education programs. Tony Hawk's commitment to giving back is a huge part of his legacy. He's not just a businessman, he's a role model, using his platform and wealth to make a real difference in the world. With all his success, you might think Tony Hawk would slow down. But if there's one thing we've learned about Tony, it's that he's always looking for the next challenge. Could Tony Hawk continue to grow his empire, or is he already thinking about his next big move? Stay tuned, because Tony's journey is far from over. As Tony Hawk approaches his 50s, most people would be thinking about retirement, but not Tony. He's still skating, still building, and still pushing the limits of what's possible. In recent years, he's launched new projects, including a partnership with Liquid Death, a canned water company that has taken the market by storm. He's also heavily invested in Skate Park Project, an initiative that aims to expand skate parks internationally. And with the resurgence of skateboarding in the Olympics,
my attitude has always been, the Olympics need skateboarding for the cool factor more than skateboarding needs the Olympics for legitimacy.
Tony is once again in the spotlight, serving as an ambassador for the sport he helped bring to the mainstream. But what's most exciting is that Tony Hawk's empire shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, Tony Hawk's empire is poised for even greater growth as he embraces new industries, technologies, and partnerships. From collaborating with digital platforms like YouTube to launching NFTs featuring some of his most iconic tricks, Tony continues to find innovative ways to connect with his fans while staying ahead of cultural trends. Skateboarding might be his passion, but entrepreneurship is his game. The Tony Hawk Foundation, now renamed the Skate Park Project, is expanding its global reach, building skate parks in communities that need them most. His vision for the future? To make skateboarding accessible to every kid, no matter where they come from. Tony wants to ensure that skateboarding isn't just a hobby, but a way to build confidence, community, and even careers. And while Tony has achieved remarkable success in business, the heart of his empire will always be the sport he loves. He's not just riding the wave of skateboarding's resurgence, he's leading it. From the streets to the corporate boardroom, Tony Hawk has redefined what it means to be a sports entrepreneur. With everything Tony has accomplished, you might wonder what could possibly be next. But here's the thing, Tony Hawk is always evolving. Whether it's a groundbreaking business deal, a new technology, or a game-changing idea for the skateboarding industry, Tony always has something up his sleeve. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when Tony Hawk makes a move, the world takes notice. So, could Tony's next business venture be his biggest one yet? Don't go anywhere. We're about to find out. As we look at Tony Hawk's journey, one thing becomes clear. He's much more than just a legendary skateboarder. He's a visionary entrepreneur, a cultural icon, and a philanthropist. His impact on skateboarding cannot be overstated. He took a sport that was once on the fringes of society and brought it to the mainstream, inspiring millions along the way. But beyond that, Tony Hawk has shown that athletes can be more than just athletes. They can be innovators, business leaders, and agents of change. Whether it's his smart business moves, his charitable work, or his ability to stay relevant in an ever-changing world, Tony Hawk's legacy is one of resilience, reinvention, and relentless passion. And that's the real genius of Tony Hawk. He didn't just build an empire for himself, he built an empire for the entire skateboarding community. He's paved the way for future generations of skaters to dream bigger, aim higher, and carve their own path, just like he did. So, what's the final takeaway from Tony Hawk's incredible journey? It's that the true measure of success isn't just about money or fame. It's about creating something that lasts. Tony Hawk didn't just change the face of skateboarding. He built an empire that will continue to thrive long after he's hung up his board. From his daring tricks to his daring business moves, Tony Hawk has shown that the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning. If this story of Tony Hawk's rise from skateboarding legend to business mogul inspired you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Revenue Racers, and let us know in the comments. What do you think is Tony Hawk's greatest achievement? And what do you think his next big move will be? We'd love to hear your thoughts.